What's up, guys? Aphotix here. Today I'm going to be bringing you a Quince guide. I didn't write anything out, so this is going to be a little bit ad-libbed, but I'm going to go over Quince's basic game plan in the early, mid, late game, some of his key cards, and general strategies that you can use. So Quince is a slow character who relies on a solid combat win, like a solid read in combat to get his offense going, and once he does, he's able to mix up the opponent very effectively and take off large chunks of life as long as he has managed his hand properly. So in the early game, Quince generally likes to block because, like I said, his speeds are slow, and also he relies on using up all of his combo points to deal significant damage. Like, individual hits do not deal a lot for him, and they don't get him anywhere. But when you are using up all your combo points, you can do upwards of 30 damage at a time, which, can kill your opponent pretty quickly. His innate positive spin allows him to reveal a face card from his hand, and then next turn he gets to access both sides of that in combat. And I'll go over what those are here. So the Jack has an attack and a dodge on it. And what this means is that if you reveal a Jack, your opponent, in order to respond to this Jack, they're going to have to block, because if they throw, that'll lose to the attack. If they attack, that'll lose to the dodge. So they can block in order to respond to this Jack. So that's the basic play for Quince, is to reveal this Jack and then either play the Jack or, to beat the block, throw them. So those are really the two things that Quince is going to do if he reveals a Jack, is either play the Jack to be safe, because blocking is the only solution to it, or to throw, which is the riskier play, in hopes that you are going to try to block his Jack. The Queen is probably the riskiest for him, and also the least efficient. So the Queen, it has a throw and an attack on it, meaning that if the opponent tries to throw or block, those will both lose. But if they attack, because the attack side of this is very slow, if they attack with basically anything, their attack will win. So Quince is either going to reveal this Queen and then play the Queen, or play a block or dodge. The thing is that playing a block is not a fantastic reward during a positive spin turn, and playing a dodge is a pretty inefficient move for Quince if he's not already in Patriot Mirror, which I'll get to in a minute what that is. But generally, he doesn't want to dodge in a neutral state, especially on a positive spin turn where he could just be doing something more powerful. So the Queen is kind of your least attractive option on the positive spin, especially because it has really strong potential as a combo ender from the Righteous Tumbler half. Then the King is probably the most threatening. So it has a dodge and a throw, meaning that if the opponent attacks or blocks, they are going to lose to the King. So what they need to do to counter it is play a throw faster than the 9.0. Meaning, if they don't have a throw faster than 9.0, then the King is actually guaranteed to win combat. So that's already really horrifying. But assuming they have a throw faster than 9.0, now they have to throw to counter this King, which gives you a great opportunity to attack them for big damage or set up a Patriot Mirror. Again, I'll get to Patriot Mirror in a second. So it's the most attractive because it puts your opponent in the most perilous situation where they're going to risk taking a lot of damage, whether they try to beat it or not. A great card to use in conjunction with Positive Spin is his 10 ability Flagstone Tax. And what that does is it allows you to name any combat option, and if your opponent reveals that in combat this turn, you get to draw 2 cards. So basically, you're discarding the 10 for the chance to draw 2 cards. The best and most simple use of this is to reveal a King with Positive Spin, and then play a Flagstone Tax naming throws. Because now what happens is that not only is it risky to play that throw to try to counter the King, now if they do so, you're going to draw extra cards anyway. So now it's even less attractive for them to do so, because they're going to have to burn a throw faster than 9.0 and draw you a bunch of cards just to stop this King. So that's a very effective setup that you can use pretty much any time and against any character, and it's going to be effective. There's other uses for this card during Patriot Mirror that I'll get to, but for the most part, that is the most simple use and something that you should be doing very often. His other ability on his numbered cards is Two Truths, and what this does is that it's one of the most powerful non-ace abilities in the game. You take 3 cards from your discard pile. They have to be different ranks. And then you flip over the top 2 cards of your deck. Then you assort those into 2 piles. Then your opponent is going to give you one of those piles that you get to put in your hand, and the other one goes in the discard pile. This card allows Quince to refuel his hand once he has spent some cards doing his mix-ups, which I'll get more into in a bit. Basically, this ability is powerful enough to the point where you'll never use the 2 for any other reason than Two Truths. And oftentimes, it's good to use Two Truths as soon as you have the full amount of targets for it, because Quince likes aces a lot. So if you have, let's say there's a 5 in your hand and then you have a 5 in the discard, you might think, well, maybe I want to wait for there to be a king in the discard because that's better than a 5. But realistically, if you're going to pair up something in your hand, actually, his 5 is a fine card in its own. Maybe the 4 is a better example. So let's say you have a 4 in your hand and there's a 4 in the discard. And you're like, well, that doesn't seem great. Maybe I want to wait on my Two Truths. But, if there's like, 2 other valid cards to go with that 4, then that's fine because Quince likes aces. So if you're pairing up things in your hand with Two Truths, that's perfectly valid. So I guess I'll get to his ace now. The more prominent half is Patriot Mirror. It's a single ace attack, 2.8 speed, no can't combo, and it knocks down. Also deals a sizable 10 damage. And if you deal damage or block damage with it, next turn you get to play 2 combat cards and then decide which one you want to use once all combat cards are revealed. So what this allows him to do is basically a much more powerful version of the positive spin with his face cards. Since now instead of having 2 options that are already forced, you're instead of having them already set for you, you get to decide which ones you want yourself. So, for example, the baseline strong thing to do during a Patriot Mirror turn is to play a dodge, because dodging is basically the way to cover your slow attacks. And since I probably presented that in the wrong order. Really what you want to be doing is a mix-up normal. So a 5 or a 6. The 5 is superior because it combos into 6 and 7, which will net you a lot of damage and gives you an ace from being a straight, as well as triggering normal draw. But 6 is fine too, just because they're probably going to look to block odd more often because of that extra strength of the 5. So either a 5 or 6, and then to cover the slowness of those, you'll play a dodge with it. And what this does is it actually guarantees that you cannot get damaged that turn, because nothing can damage a dodge and an attack. When you get to choose between the 2 of those. So that is your baseline strategy. And since they're knocked down, this mix-up normal has a 50% chance roughly to work. Also worth noting that against Zane, the 5 or the 3 or the 7 is a 100% chance to win. So it's actually even better against him. But in general, a normal attack plus a dodge is your standard, safe, but very effective way of using Patriot Mirror. And then from there, there's 2 other really effective permutations you can use once you've established this very safe but strong offense. The next permutation is a dodge plus a throw. So now the difference between the throw and the normal attack here is that now you don't have to worry about the 50-50 of even or odd. But now if they played a throw faster than yours, now you will lose to that. So the reason why this is still good is because once you've shown that you're always going to do the mix-up normal, their incentive to throw is very little, because that's just going to lose to the mix-up normal. So once you get them believing that you're just going to keep going for these mix-up normals, that is when you get to strike and play a throw instead, which is, just going to beat their block. And if they attack you have the dodge to cover. The third one is, it's kind of similar to the in risk levels to the throw and dodge. The last one you could do is play something like a 5 and a 6, basically an even and an odd. And what that does is it's unblockable. So if they didn't play a faster attack, then they're going to get hit and take a lot of damage. So once again, because what they have to do is inherently unsafe, which is attacking you when normally you're going to be dodging, it's pretty unattractive for them to try to play a fast attack during your Patriot Mirror turns. So again, once you strike that fear into your opponent, you can mix in these unblockables, which is just going to net you a whole lot of damage. Those are the three primary ways to use it, and also you can use the flagstone tax to help manipulate how your opponent behaves. For example, if you want to go for the dodge and throw setup, for example, you can name throw with flagstone tax, and now, oh god, I hit the up and down button. Okay, sorry about that. So now you can name throw with the flagstone tax, and now not only is it really unsafe for them to try to throw, but now they have an extra disincentive to throw. And also, besides the fact that now your play is just going to be even stronger and more likely to win, you can also really confuse them, because if you name throw with this on a turn like that, they're going to assume, assuming they're a savvy player, they're going to go, oh, okay, he's going to play a dodge and a throw, and then he's going to get this extra payoff if I try to throw to beat his throw. So now, once you get them thinking that, now you could name throw with this and then just play the standard normal attack and dodge, and all of a sudden they might be playing throw to beat your throw mix-up, except there is no throw mix-up. You're drawing cards and you're hitting them with a full combo, and they're entirely destroyed. So, and those things come up in real games. That's not theoretical. That actually happens. So it's definitely something to try to incorporate into your game. Figure out how much your opponent's trying to counterplay what you're doing, and try to trick him with the flagstone tax. It's a very, very strong thing to do. So, as far as Quince's early game strategy, in most matchups, it does vary a bit to bit between characters. But for most matchups, early game is all about building up your hand. So, realistically, you want to block as much as possible. Obviously, the problem with that is that you're just going to get thrown, and that's no good. So, the best things to mix in along with those blocks are, if you have them available, some of your faster throws, because oftentimes your opponents will go with the slower throws in the early game. Because, for example, Quince's 7 is a very valuable card. So your opponent usually won't expect you to play it early. So it's going to net you a lot of... It's a very safe card to play, especially if you're blocking a lot. Mixing in a 7 throw is very safe and usually will win combat. Even though it is a pretty costly thing to do. It's worth it, though. Especially with 2 truths able to bring back the 7s. 8 throw is also fine. 9 and 10 throw are a little tough because, like I said, your opponent's going to try to be throwing you, and 9.8 speed and 10.8 speed are very slow. So it's likely that even if you end up running into a throw clash, you're going to lose anyway. So the slow throws are much better used. They're much better used as blocks or powering up. I mean, the 10 obviously has applications with flagstone tax as well. But the 9 is more of a block or a powering up card. And then as far as attacks in the early game, I don't recommend too many of them. Jack can be okay. Patriot Mirror can be okay. For example, if you feel like you're really under pressure, you don't have any throws that are going to beat their throws, you can throw out a Patriot Mirror, and if it happens to catch a throw, instead of playing a dodge and a mix-up normal, you can play a block and a mix-up normal, and this is much less threatening to the opponent, but it's going to keep your hand more stable in size. Instead of spending a lot of cards, you'll kind of break even. So it's harder to get damage in this way, but it's better if, again, you're feeling pressured into using a Patriot Mirror to try to get them off your back, and, you want to try to get something out of the Patriot Mirror. A normal attack and a block is a fine choice, because, again, it's still safe, and it will likely build up your hand. Then once you transition into the mid-game, once you've gotten past 10 cards, ideally, then you're looking to... also, it's worth noting that whenever you land these throws, or, maybe you're randomly going to have to play a 3 attacker, something you're not that excited about, but, it happens, depending on your hand. Whenever you deal damage, you're going to get to trigger positive spin. In the early game, Jack is a fine choice because it's safe. And again, if the opponent wants to beat it, they have to block, which is awesome because if they want to block it, you can throw them again, and now you just dealt damage to them um, their block's gone, and then you can reveal the jack again, and now they're in the same situation. And if this keeps up, that can really put a lot of pressure on your opponent. So it can be a very effective early game card, although it's also a very strong combo ender. So usually you want to have one of those lying around for Patriot Mirror. The king as a positive spin card in the early game is also fine, just again because it creates a lot of risks for the opponent. But the problem is that when you actually get to throw them with this, you're really looking to complete your combo, because this throw does not knock down, and it has 2 extra combo points available for you to use. So really you want to be comboing it into maybe a Righteous Tumbler, or a normal and then a jack or something like that. So the reward's a little lower in the early game, but it's still fine because like I said, it does jeopardize them, and in general those turns are still in your favor, even if you're not going to have the ideal payoff for it. And then once you hit the mid game is where you're really going to start trying to force Patriot Mirror. You're going to throw it out as a combat card more often. You can start dodging here once you. I really would only recommend dodging once you're at 12 cards, or maybe even 13. Because blocking is still fine otherwise. But around there, you could start dodging into Patriot Mirrors also, and the inherent mix-up of Patriot Mirror or dodge into Patriot Mirror is quite good. And if they try to play around that by just consistently blocking or dodging themselves, then Quince is more than happy to bust out a 7th throw into a 6 jack for very solid damage and a positive spin trigger. So you can use it, if they're really avoiding the Patriot Mirror, you can abuse positive spin to force the issue, in those cases. Later in the game, Consent of the Governed, the other half of Quince's ace, it's a pretty weak card. It's 2 aces, 1.2 speed for 16 damage, and then you can pump a 3rd ace for another 14. So for 3 aces, you're getting 30 damage at 1.2 speed, which is not very good, but it does serve a purpose because it is Quince's fastest attack. So what that means is that oftentimes it's going to beat everything other than maybe 1 or 2 attacks in your opponent's deck. So having access to it is going to limit their combo starting options usually, which makes Quince a little safer when he tries a throw or something like that. But generally, in the mid and late game, Quince is pretty willing to play a pretty broad distribution of combat options. He's not really as locked into trying to for example, Lum in the mid game really likes to attack with his jack and whatnot because he can land straights off it and this and that. But Quince is a little more open. He's got a lot of different choices he can go with. So in general, some combos that you're gonna want to do is 5, 6, 7 is probably the best thing you could do, and you can also play a jack after that for huge damage. So 5, 6, 7 jack is amazing. 6, 7 Righteous Tumbler is great. Crosswise Toss, normal jack, Crosswise Toss, Righteous Tumbler are all very solid. And then I guess I could go over a little bit card by card breakdown. So the 2, like I said, 2 Truths is incredibly strong. Always use it as the ability, no matter what. I guess you could not use it as the ability if you're against the Persephone and you're under 10 life and she has a counter in her hand. Then I guess maybe you don't want to discard a 2 for no reason. The 3, primarily a dodge or power-up fodder. Generally, when it comes to your dodge, you're either going to want to keep your 3s or 4s around. So generally, I end up powering up with one of them and then keeping the other one around for dodges. That's basically both of their primary roles, is to either dodge or be power-up fodder. 5, again, 5 is a very good combo card, and it's a great mix-up normal for Patriot Mirror. So usually you want these for the attack. Although if you have multiples, it's okay to block. I'm pretty rarely powering these up, though, because you want at least one around for the mix-up normal or the straights. 6, again, it's his realistically, it's his only even normal, because, again, 2 is not really something you're going to be doing. So, for the most part, 6 is only even normal. It deals a lot of damage, combos into 7, so it's great. Again, you mostly want it for the attack. 7 is an all-star card because the 7 attack is fantastic, as we've gone over. The 7 throw also fantastic, as we've gone over. 8, I'm willing to throw with 8 sometimes, definitely. Otherwise, it's okay to block with. You can also power up with it, depending on the situation. It's not a bad card to power up with. 9 is my primary block card along with 4, and definitely willing to power up with it. 10, it's fine to block with it, but Flagstone Tax is pretty awesome, so you find a good mix of blocking and using it as Flagstone Tax. The Jack, good in the early game with positive spin, fine combo ender, and if you find yourself with multiples in the late game, it's fine to dodge with, or even in the mid game, it's fine to dodge with if you have to. That's more than okay. The Queen, the weakest of the positive spin cards, but a fantastic combo ender with Righteous Tumbler. And also, in the early game, I probably should have mentioned this, it's fine to dodge into Righteous Zeal, because 12 damage on a knockdown is pretty solid, and it triggers positive spin, so you could do some nice things there. For example, if you dodge into Righteous Zeal in the early game, then positive spin reveal a king. Now you can either play a king, or you could play a mix-up normal, and that's very advantageous. So that's another good setup you can do. The king itself, I've already talked about. It's a very scary positive spin card. It has the potential to checkmate people. It compromises them. Great card. Usually I'm going to use it for positive spin. Or it's also your most damaging throw in the late game. Like if you just have a read to go with the throw, it is your most damaging one. So not a bad choice for that either. Again, we've already gone over the ace. Patriot Mirror is kind of where Quince gets his damage in, and it's a very threatening card all around. So as far as Quince's Joker usage, I think that Quince, maybe more so than other characters, feels like he should be able to Gold Burst. I think that's the impression a lot of players get, is like, oh, like he even has an unavoidable Gold Burst setup with Patriot Mirror. But honestly, I don't advise any of that. I mean, sure, there's definitely situations where Gold Bursting is correct with basically any character. But for the most part, I actually like to Blue Burst more often than Gold Burst with Quince. The main reason being that as the game goes on, due to Quince's 2 truths and also his ability to checkmate with King, or just have extremely safe mix-ups with Patriot Mirror, in general, the longer the game goes, the more chances you're going to give him to get a nearly unstoppable series of offense going. So the more chances he has to do that, the better he is. He doesn't particularly like short games, and also drawing 2 cards is, it's just strong for him. Obviously, drawing 2 aces is stronger for pretty much everyone, but it also increasing the value of his bluffs in the mid game. Like, let's say you haven't jokered yet. Like, I would certainly, if you're gonna Gold Burst, the early game is not the time to do it, because having your bluff power be strong in the mid game is great, because Quince is gonna have a big hand. The opponent's gonna have a really hard time discerning whether it's a real joker or real rewind time or not. So I definitely advise keeping jokers around till at least the mid game, and I personally recommend rewind time a little bit more than Gold Burst. As for matchups, I'm going to go ahead and just click on the guide button again. I'll just go over each matchup real briefly. So against Grave, the match kind of plays out like he's faster than you. He hurts a little bit more, not by a lot, but a little bit more. So in general, it's just a matter of you triggering your positive spin and your Patriot Mirror and making, and getting in damage through those. So it just Quince's very general game plan. Grave does have a counter, which is annoying, but whenever he counters something, it's card advantage for you, so that's okay. You don't mind so much. One card to definitely be concerned about, though, is his Jack, because that's going to really stifle your ability to build up an early game hand. So against Grave in the first few turns, you might want to consider dodging or throwing more than usual. Dodge will get rid of the Jack and let you deal damage to him, and throwing will lose to the Jack, but it'll get rid of it so then you can go back to building up a hand. I know it sounds a little lame, but trust me, it works. Jaina is actually pretty annoying. So she's going to be faster than you all game long, with some pretty intense combo starters that are going to hurt if they connect, such as King and 2 attack. So you really have to be cautious of those. The good news is that her throws are by far her weakest option in the early game. So you're going to have a really nice opportunity to build your hand and really force her to throw you, which is going to expose her to your throws or your Patriot mirrors. So, just leverage the fact that her throws are weak and force her to throw you. That's pretty much the key to some success in that matchup. Although the match is a little bit difficult. Midori. So, against Midori, the early game is awkward because, he has pretty strong throws available. They can deal up to 16 damage, or actually more than that, but for the most part, 16 damage. So you gotta be a little more willing to normal attack here. If you have a straight in the early game, if you have the 5, 6, 7, it's certainly not bad to attempt it. Because if it does catch a throw, it's a huge boon for you because you're going to deal very significant damage and jumpstart your offense by getting an ace. In the mid and late game, if you can it's just a matter of making a good read and triggering Patriot Mirror because he does not have a good time dealing with those because his innate ability only allows his dragon attacks to ignore normal dodges. So all of your face card dodges work as usual. So I guess actually one thing to note is that when you're doing Patriot Mirror, make sure you're dodging with face cards and not normal dodges. Otherwise you will be sad. But as long as you do that, you can mix them up pretty effectively. It's a pretty even match. Setsuki. So Setsuki is annoying because Quince likes to build up and Setsuki has no need to build up. So there's an inherent mismatch there. However, due to her 70 life and the fact that if you do manage to land Patriot Mirrors or positive spins, you can deal a lot of damage quickly. You're going to have to play a little more aggressively than usual in this match and really just try to pick out when she's throwing and try to Patriot Mirror her or land a big straight on those turns. And if you can do so, the match is manageable. I don't have much else to say about it, though. It's kind of standard, but try not to build up as much of a hand because you're not going to have time to do so. Against Rook, very similar to against Midori. However, he doesn't have any dodges and is a bit slower in general, which actually helps you out with landing Patriot Mirror. It can get special blocked by Stonewall or Entangling Vines, but that's mostly okay. Throwing out Patriot Mirror in the mid game is pretty strong, has a pretty high chance of working, and also it's worth noting that Patriot Mirror will shut down Rock Armor attempts. So later in the game, Patriot Mirror even more, and that'll work out pretty nicely. Against the Gray, I don't have a lot to say about this one because both characters are kind of they kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways. They're both very slow. The Gray does have a trump attack in his King that is worth noting. So the King, especially in the mid game when you're trying to do Patriot Mirrors or maybe throws, be wary of the King if he hasn't played any. But in general, it's okay to go on a little bit lower hand size than usual against him because Moral High Ground, his innate ability, is going to add a lot of extra damage if you try to build up a full hand. However, you still need to build up some cards because if you try to just match him on a low hand, he is much more efficient and will end up beating you. So you gotta stay like a few cards ahead of him at all times, and you can do fine. Against Valerie, she's annoying because it's really risky to throw her. She doesn't mind normal attacking into your blocks once she has a massive normal string to do because the risk reward is well in her favor. So you have to really be cautious when trying to throw her, and also be aware that you will never. It's quite likely that in the entire game you will never win a speed clash on anything. So it's just about making superior reads. She has below average life, and she's vulnerable to jokers, so definitely save your jokers for rewind times in this match. Against Geiger, there's a really crucial thing about Geiger. So his Jack, his fast time spiral, is at 2.4 speed. This is faster than everything Quince has except Consent of the Governed. So once he has built up Temporal Distortion, which is his ability that allows him to do big combos on you that can potentially deal half or more of your life, of your max life. I mean, it could just kill you outright if you're anywhere in the 30s, 40s, 50s, even higher. But usually it's not going to go above 50. Usually somewhere in the 40s is where it caps out. So against that Jack, especially if he can knock you down the turn before he uses it, you need to have Consent of the Governed available. You can also use a Gold Burst, but the problem with that is Gold Bursts Jokers are very effective at preventing time spirals in the early game. So when I'm playing Quince, I much prefer to just have Consent of the Governed available at all times for when temporal distortion happens. So just make sure you have Consent of the Governed. Other than that, he's going to get some free damage off of time spirals, but again, if you Joker them, you can mitigate a good amount of that. And he's no better than average at dealing with Quince's mix-ups once he has them going. Lum is another annoying one because he's one of the few characters that actually has no problem building up a hand with you in the early game. So you really have to figure out when you can start playing offense as soon as possible. Again, it doesn't mean you want to rush it. Like, against Satsuki, you do want to rush it. Even if you know you don't have enough cards to really play offense yet, you just kind of have to do it anyway. Because she's just going to kill you otherwise. But against Lum, you gotta wait until you have just barely enough to start playing offense. If you wait too long, then he's just going to set up an amazing hand and start poker flourishing you, and that's no good. So it's about just barely hitting the critical mass, and then starting to be aggressive with dodges and throws. And again, Quince, his mix-ups are universally good, so I'm just going to stop repeating myself on that point. Quince's mix-ups are good against every single person in the game. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I can stop repeating it. Okay, against Arg. Arg is actually a fine match for Quince because Quince is pretty decent at knocking down due to Patriot Mirror. And also, he likes to empty throw in the early game, and by empty throw, I mean throw you and then not follow up. So, both of those are going to lead to knockdowns, so he's going to prevent some damage that way. Also, your 6 attack is even in higher demand here than usual, since the 6 attack is the one that will cross up the bubble shield if you knock him down. So make sure you keep your 6s around to threaten that even cross up. And his throws are as slow as yours, so that's another nice thing for Quince in this match. And also, it's very bad if you... okay, so this is actually the one match where you're going to do a weird thing with Patriot Mirror sometimes. So occasionally in this match, your Patriot Mirror is going to get blocked by Bubble Shield. So you're going to trigger Patriot Mirror because it did block damage, but now his Bubble Shield is up. So one setup that you could specifically do against Arg, I mean, you could do this against anybody, but it's just not great usually. But against Arg, it's much better. And that is to since he's not knocked down, since he blocked it, you can play a normal attack or pretty much any attack, but a normal attack is usually best, and a throw, and that is going to give you coverage over any throw he does and any block he does. So he has to attack you on the turn after he bubble shields. Otherwise, you can use that normal attack throw setup to break the bubble shield right away. So that's just something to keep in mind. The mirror match, I don't know, guess right better than the other Quince. If you notice his hand is really bad, if it has very low damage, then be willing to throw a lot. Because if his hand's got low damage, Quince sucks at punishing throws if he has weak attack options. Getting a lead in this match can be really devastating. So I don't know, just try hard. I don't know. I mean, it's a mirror match. I don't know what else to say. Onimaru. So Onimaru is tricky because his throws are not actually nearly as bad in this match as they are in a lot of others. He actually can afford to pump them usually with at least one card per throw. So each throw is going to deal over 10 damage to you, which adds up really quickly, especially because once you get to the mid game, his dodges are going to deal huge damage. He's also faster than you at most times. You actually don't need to fear his guard crush as much as other characters, because the threat of you Patriot mirroring is always present, and he certainly doesn't want to waste 10s losing to Patriot Mirror, so he's actually more likely to either dodge into them or even use them as the throw, depending on the player. Definitely keep your 9s around for blocks though, just to make sure his 8th throw can never guard crush you. And also in general, Gold Burst is a little better here than usual because Onimaru has pretty weak combos. Although it's still fine to rewind time on a dodge. If he dodges you, rewind time's fine. But Gold Burst is better here than usual, and this is the one match where I would say I use Gold Burst. Excuse me. I use Gold Burst more than Blue Burst. Against Trock, he's got very limited dodges. He does have fast face cards, and that can cause problems with beating Patriot Mirror. But in general, throwing out Patriot Mirror is pretty reliable at triggering it. Even if he blocks it, getting the 2 combat cards can really help your offense out. Also worth noting that against the grapplers, Positive Spin revealing Queen is a little better than average, just because it's usually hard to throw the grapplers, but the Queen is the card that lets you throw them safely because it has that attack option on it to cover the fact that their throws are faster than yours. So Positive Spin Queen also is more effective. Not only that, but how I mentioned that he has those faster face cards, it's possible to bait out those faster face cards by revealing the Queen and then blocking. So Positive Spin Queen's a little better here than usual. And in general, I find this match to be pretty good for Quince. If you knock him down, start using Flagstone Tax, Patriot Mirror, Trock does not like any of that. Versus BBB, this match is really rough because BBB, once he puts you to range, you basically have to just make a really good guess to get out of it. If he knocks you down during range, you either have to Gold Burst or play Consent of the Governed to not lose to Drunk Shot, which sucks. I mean, technically you win against Drunk Shot by blocking, but you take 13 damage, which is awful, and he can activate Overdrive to make that unblockable 16, which is super awful. So the real answer is try your absolute best to figure out when Extensor Grab is coming, both at close and at range, and just do your absolute best to attack it. Also, you got to be cautious at close range for his single ace, because it's faster than everything you have except Consent of the Governed. So, and it deals 11 damage, so those add up really quickly if you're trying to play Patriot Mirrors, or poke out his throws or anything else. One card that is better here than usual, though, is your Jack as an attack in combat, because it beats his normal attacks and Robo Headbutt. So against BBB, you're going to have to throw out your Jack sometimes as a combat card to try to beat 2 attacks or Robo Headbutts or any other normal. So definitely be aware of using the Jack in combat, and realize that if you get to range, best of luck to you. Against Manelker, so an annoying thing about Manelker is that he can use Into Oblivion to mess up your 2 truths, and also if you're careless, he can Into Oblivion away all of your aces, and that makes dealing damage way harder. You can still win the game if he gets rid of all your aces for sure, but it's much more inconvenient because now you're either relying on just hard reads or positive spin, which, you know, on something like a Jack doesn't lead to a lot of damage. So, you know, it's a little tough to deal with Into Oblivion. In general, though, I mean, he's going to have a lot of access to attacks that are always faster than your attacks. He's got below average life. It's okay to play at your normal pace, but kind of like Lum, you want to play offense the second that you possibly can. Man, I'm not defining that well. So, but when I say the second you possibly can, I mean the very turn where your hand hits a comfortable saturation is where you want to start playing offense. Because if you wait too long, you're letting him build up resources which he can use better than you. But if you try to play offense too early, then he can play black face cards and bone crackers and run you out of cards, and then you're just absolutely dead. So it's about finding that maybe instead of like that 11 to 12 card offense, that 9 to 10 card offense is what you're looking for. Against Persephone, Quince is actually reasonably okay at dealing with at dealing with like Mistress Command taking away cards and Bare Your Soul denying cards, because Quince has pretty versatile cards. You know, he's got a lot of different options distributed along all his cards, so it's hard for her to lock you out of options, which is a good thing for you because she is faster. Both of you have really deadly mix-ups. The key here is, I mean, don't let her Mistress Command you if you don't have a big hand. Really, just play it. Like, do not try to throw or poke and then get dodged into Mistress Command if you do not have a stable hand. That's kind of true of any character, but for Quince, if you avoid that, you really can just play a fundamental game and do just fine. Against Gloria, so another character that's just always going to be faster than you forever. The thing is that she hates being knocked down, and Patriot Mirror does a fantastic job of that. As well as, you know, doing those early game throws. You can also really leverage your Flagstone tax here to make her more uncomfortable, even on turns where you don't have a positive spin or Patriot Mirror. If you just throw out a Flagstone tax and name attack, now all of a sudden she has to wonder whether you're going to try to throw her. It usually is going to end up drawing you extra cards if you do that, so it's something I recommend. Also, this is another match where Gold Bursting is much better than usual because her combos are very weak in general, and it can kickstart your offense. And since you both like long, drawn-out games, something that's going to help your offense start up faster is pretty great. So this is maybe the I think I said that Onimar was the only one where I Gold Burst more often than not, but I think against Gloria it might be correct to Gold Burst more often than not also. Against Gwen is a bit annoying because, kind of like Satsuki, she's going to force you to start playing offense before you really should. Unlike Satsuki, unlike Satsuki, Gwen is always going to have, in the mid game at least, she's always going to have a solid throw combo. So more so than Satsuki, you're going to have to really be cautious of her throws in the mid game. Where, you know, Satsuki, she can get hands where the throw payoff is simply just an empty throw and dealing 6 damage. But Gwen's throws in the mid game are always going to combo into something, whether it be a king or aces or whatnot. So due to that, though, she's more likely to throw you, which gives you more opportunities to Patriot Mirror and start your mix-ups. Other than that, you know, just be ready to play offense more sooner than usual, and you could pretty much play a standard game other than that. Against Vendetta, his king is really annoying to deal with because 1.0 is better than anything you've got. So on knockdown, you just have to make the right read. There's no other way out, which can be really annoying because he can also start mixing in mix-up normals on top of everything else he can do, and it can really get difficult for Quince to deal with. So if you can get rid of his kings or just beat them however possible, then you're on the right track. The other thing to be aware of is that Patriot Mirror should only be executed if you have a super duper full hand, because he can acrobatics to cancel it out and both of your cards are going to go away. So you really got to be careful of when you Patriot Mirror. That said, though, those two things are hard to deal with, but he's got below average life. His normal attacks build up your hand as much as they build up his, which you're absolutely comfortable with doing. So if you can navigate those kings and just play Patriot Mirror when you have a really full hand, you can do just fine. Zane, as I mentioned, you have the guaranteed win setup during Patriot Mirror. However, his media attacks are really scary because he has a genuine 50-50 of even or odd. But the problem is it's actually worse than that, because once he has established that genuine 50-50 of even or odd attack when you're knocked down, he can start mixing in throws. So now you must respond to that by starting to attack, which then loses to both the evens and the odds. So overall, it's pretty disgusting when you're knocked down, but you do really horribly mean things to him when he is knocked down as well. So it's just a matter of momentum. And as long as you have that knowledge, also Flagstone tax, naming attacks when you're knocked down is a very smart thing to do because you're just going to get free cards. especially if you have jokers. Like if he knocks you down, you have joker available. Name attack, hell, name attack twice. You could seriously like name attack twice if you wanted, or name attack and third. Do whatever you got to do. Just play a bunch of taxes, and then play unsafe moves and just see what happens. I'm sure it'll all work out fine. I think that's about all I need to cover for this basic guide. If you have any other feedback or questions, I'll probably just throw this up in a thread so you can share your thoughts, tell me anything else that I might have missed. Thanks for listening.